The U.S. military has killed dozens of people in recent airstrikes against alleged drug smuggling boats in the Atlantic and Pacific. The Trump administration has labeled it a war against narco-terrorists to curtail the flow of drugs into the U.S. The attacks will be among the issues discussed by leaders of the European Union and the community of Latin American and Caribbean states. They're also expected to talk about what authorities call the cocaine crisis in Europe during their two-day meeting, which starts Sunday in Colombia.
This is what European drug raids look like. This was one of a string of coordinated operations across nearly 50 sites in 7 countries. Police arrested dozens of people and seized millions of euros worth of cocaine. And yet, such successes barely make a dent in the market.
We see a lot of cocaine in the European streets, especially in the past 2-3 years. The price of cocaine that we see at the European wholesale and retail market, which has been significantly dropped in the past 2 years, from, for example, 40,000 per kilogram of cocaine to, in some member states, to 12 or 14,000 euros per kilogram. It means that basically the European cocaine market is oversaturated.
The cocaine comes from Latin America, from the countries in yellow on this map: Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. Transit countries are shown in red. They include Ecuador, Panama, and Costa Rica. Countries along the West African coast are also part of the system, sometimes even serving as logistics hubs where the origins of cocaine shipments are obscured, making them harder to detect when they arrive in Europe. The main European points of entry include the major ports of Antwerp in Belgium and Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and increasingly French ports. Even though the authorities know all this, they're failing to stop it. There's even been a drop in the volume of cocaine being seized at those ports.
We see different diversification of the methods and the modus operandi of the trafficking of cocaine. Primarily, we see more and more shifting of cocaine to the different member states or the different smaller ports. We call this waterbed effect. For example, France. France has a boom of the cocaine seizures in the ports. They're also changing their methods of the transportation. Primarily, this what we are seeing in the high seas transshipment operations.
The demand for cocaine in Europe has made its trafficking and distribution a major focus of drug gangs in the European Union. Law enforcement agencies here say they want to collaborate more at an operational level with their counterparts in Latin America.
We can now speak to Renata Segura. She is the Program Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at Crisis Group, and she joins us from New York. Welcome to DW. So why exactly is Europe seeing such an increase in narcotics shipments and specifically cocaine?
Well, this responds to 2 things. One is a change in the patterns of the drugs that are being demanded by the Europeans who consume it. Historically, Europe has used a lot of drugs that have been produced inside the continent. Those are mostly synthetic drugs, but we have seen an increasing demand for cocaine, partially because of the prices going down. But also what we have seen in Latin America is an explosion of countries that have been involved in the production and transit of cocaine. So now you have more places from which the drug is going to Europe. Additionally, we have seen a reduction of the number of people in the United States that use cocaine with a preference for fentanyl and other drugs. And so the cocaine that is being produced in Latin America has been moving either up to Africa, to Latin America itself, but also a lot to Europe, where it's being in higher demand than before.
And what do you see as the biggest dangers that come with these expanding drug markets?
I mean, from the Latin America side, the most impressive or the most serious impact is the amount of violence that this produces in the communities where the drugs are either produced or sold. While the European countries and the Americans have been always focusing on reducing the size of the market and reducing the amount of drugs that arrive to its coasts, in Latin America, the greatest problem is the amount of violence that this is producing. And this is in part a result of the way in which the drug operations work, which are not like in the 1990s, where we used to see a very organized and hierarchical cartel where one person will control from the coca crops to the selling. But now we have seen a decentralization along the commodity chain. And so that means that more groups are fighting each other to be part of that production chain, to be the ones that either sell it, store it, grow it, produce it, and that produces an enormous amount of violence, which is the highest concern for Latin Americans at this moment.
Well, we heard that law enforcement agencies in Europe would, in fact, like to work more closely with authorities across Latin America. So what could this cooperation look like?
I mean, Europe has been one of the most important partners to Latin American states in trying to address the root causes of the problem. So Europe has historically put a quite amount of money in making sure that people have livelihoods that are legal and they don't have to go through drug trafficking, strengthening of institutions such as the police, the justice system, etc. I think right now, because as in your report, you guys well said that violence is also coming to Europe, there's been a shift to focusing a little bit more both in interdiction of drugs, but also in the law enforcement side. So I think that what we're going to see in this new collaboration is likely to be focused on that, on the justice, on the law enforcement, on trying to make sure that they capture the amount of drugs that are coming out of the region. But we're also hoping that Europe doesn't end the historical tradition of supporting strengthening of institutions and creating legal economies for people who are involved now in the drug trafficking.
That was Renata Segura from Crisis Group. Many thanks indeed for all of your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.